macro reflect each other. And to be going through the grieving process so deeply whilst it's happening collectively as well is obviously it's interesting, but it also raises lots of questions about how I can use my experiences to be of service to other people, and especially with regards to the labyrinth, which I've been using to help me through my process.
Which I think is beautiful too, because not only do you use it with your process, you connect with other people. You've helped me with my process in this labyrinth as well, because I'm learning how to draw it out and to put the thoughts into that space and to reach a meditative place from that.
Well, that's good.
I think
good to hear.
Yeah,
I mean, it's funny how it comes to people, or how I come to people, people come to me. The last labyrinth I did before we went into lockdown, it was for the full moon back in March, early March. And I just had a feeling to get in touch with somebody I know who lives in my area. She used to be a teacher, one of my children, and I invited her to go with me. And this is a friendship that's still in the very nascent stages, so we're still really getting to know each other. And whilst we were driving to the beach, she told me how she had a diagnosis for an autoimmune disease just before Christmas. So she had a deep need for healing that I wasn't aware of, with my conscious mind anyway. And we went to the beach and we had a beautiful experience, or at least she told me she did too. And she sent me a message a couple of weeks ago with a photograph. She's now put one into her garden, so that she can continue to use it because she found it helped her so much.
We have here in Reno, in one of my favorite garden spaces and one of my favorite meditative places at the Rancho San Rafael. It's like in the Queen's Gardens or something like that there, but there's an just outside of just outside of the Arboretum is a labyrinth. And it's been there for decades and decades and decades. And I can't tell you how many times I've just been in a space of just mental distress in some form or another. And I found myself in this garden and in this labyrinth, and starting at the outside and taking the time to walk it all the way to the inside and breathe. And then from the inside, finding my way back out. And I think it's such a great way, especially when it comes to consciousness and understanding what consciousness is and different levels of consciousness. I think it's a neat way of taking these mental or these concepts for what consciousness is and putting it into something that's tangible, because it gives us this metaphor. And in some places, or kind of depending on how the labyrinth is, but traditionally, or the way that I've seen them, they almost look like a brain. Where like you get to walk in to yourself and you get to explore and with the patience understand what comes up. And then in diving in deep, you also have to find your way back out of yourself and how to connect that to the world or to the collective consciousness.
Yeah, that's you've explained that beautifully, actually. It's so powerful because it is both physical form and metaphor, and its form springs from sacred geometry, which has the blueprint, the pattern for creation, for life. So stepping into a labyrinth is to step into this cosmic patterning with conscious intention. And that's just an incredibly powerful thing to do.
Like resonance and frequency almost, or it seems to me like it's connecting to spirit in such a way, or I don't even want to necessarily call it spirit, because I think that holds, or that's a loaded word, right?
Mm.
But if, like, when we're talking about raising our vibrations or like increasing our frequencies or whatever, like it just seems like it connects us or harmonizes us. So, because we're talking again about dance and music, right? But it
Hmm.
harmonizes us with the environment.
That's right. Yeah, with the very fabric of reality, you could even say.
What I think is really beautiful too about your use of labyrinths is how temporary they can be, or in getting to know you and getting to meet you through CIS and through our intensives. We meet on the beach of Pacifica. And through the beaches of Pacifica and through the beaches of your life, you found yourself creating these labyrinths in the sand.
Yeah, that's right. The whole labyrinth journey for me began back in 2010, so 10 years ago.
Mm.
Um, and I was living in Japan with my husband and young family. And I was suffering very badly from depression, and I wanted to take action to self heal. And so it was quite mysterious in a way. I mean, I had a book on labyrinths that came into my possession through following a dream. And I had it for a few years, but I could feel it. I remember it almost sort of calling to me from the cupboard where it was stored. And I pulled this thing out, and it was a very beautiful book. It's got a small labyrinth embossed into the cover, so you can actually use the cover as a finger labyrinth. So, it's immediately a very tactile object that it sort of pulled me in. And once I'd learned to draw them and felt a great need to walk them, then the beach was really the most obvious place. And I think that there's a potency, Kelsey, to creating them not to be kept. There's to offer a creative act in service to the cosmos is it can help us align us with our what our purpose here in life is.
I think that's important too. And I think, like, it paints a neat picture, because especially when we're talking about the creative space or the art space, in connecting in the way that you do, there's the witness, like you're saying, it's offering it up to something much bigger than you. It's not for it's not for tangible purposes. It's not for something with the ego. Like, it's something that you actively have to work through. And like you're saying, this aspect of letting it go is challenging. And I think I stumble over my words a lot here because I've been meditating a lot on what it means to let it all go. And as an artist, in trying to create something, there's always that question of attachment, right? Or when it comes to the material world and trying to manifest things, or even trying to maintain stability within the material world, like everything just disappears anyway eventually, or like the energy is always ongoing. And when we get into this realm of creative expression and processing and consciousness and the collective, I think I wonder, or at least I wonder, especially through your research in this and what you have found, because where I've come to, I guess, blocks or like a lack of understanding is with when it comes to intention. Because if putting the energy into a thing, like despite what the thing looks like, or despite the aesthetics of it, although the geometry of it and the alignment, I think, is important. What do you have to say as far as intention or meaning goes into it? Because I think a lot of people, when they're in this space of beginning to transform, or if they're forced with a big change, or they're trying to express themselves creatively, there's a lack of authenticity or insecurity. And so yeah.
Yeah, I think one way to reduce a sort of anxiety about what you're creating is to focus more on the process than where you think you might be heading to. So obviously we need a sort of vision to lead us forward. You know, we need movement, and creativity is a combination of implicate and explicate forces. So there's something on the outside of us that's pulling us into it. And there's something on the inside of us that's reaching out to touch whatever's on the outside. And I think as an artist and a healer, I think releasing myself from even needing to know what the result might be, and just always focusing on the process, which puts my intention at the very heart of everything that I'm doing. And then I think what's key about that is that it's connected directly with my own heart, and it then becomes a labor or a service of love. And then once you've tuned into that, I think you can start to relax into that process, and then, you know, let the amazingness unfold all around you and ripple out into places that you will never see or know about.
It's almost like labyrinths then become a container for keeping us in present time with our emotions.
Oh, that's a really nice way of saying it.
Well,
I like that.
I like that you're talking about these inside and outside forces.
Mm.
And this something that's trying to contain our energy, something that's trying to define what that is, right? Because as creatives, we're channels for that energy. And if we disconnect ourselves from our creative process, and we're not allowing ourselves to feel, and we're not allowing ourselves to be in present time. And when we start to feel and we start to be in present time and really acknowledge our emotions and be authentic, it can be kind of scary or different, right? Big changes. I think, like, one of the revelations that I've had in the last couple of days, especially with the COVID stuff and people wearing masks, is even though they're like containing their like physical body even more, like they're containing their expressions, like with their mouths, right? Like they can't like really like put on a fake, can't put on a face.
No.
So people, I find, are almost forced to be authentic right now. They have to communicate from a more present and emotional space. Like even the language and the words that people have been using, I've noticed, have been much more creative because we can't see each other's expressions.
Right.
We can't fill in the gaps. So people are having to talk in a way that really allows them to be more vulnerable.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know, something like sharing vulnerability might be easier in a way with a little bit of physical distance, you know, because there's an obvious gap there that needs to be bridged. And I mean, I don't know. People have different feelings, don't they, about doing things online and being in the room. And I've always been much more in the room kind of person, I think, because I work with energy. So I I suppose we all do, to, you know, whether we're aware of it or not. We all do, because we're walking antenna. You know, we're receiving and transmitting energy all the time. That's our purpose, I feel, as a part of the biosphere. You know, we're receiving and transmitting energy and adding to layers of life on the planet. But yeah, no, I think the labyrinth as a container is a really good way of seeing it. And when you were talking earlier about it with the being connected with the brain, I think, you know, we can understand, because it is essential, I think, to accept that at the heart of all of this is a mystery that we can't really explain or ever know. But one way to understand, or to think about how the labyrinth might work, is that, you know, as you're following the pattern, that occupies the sort of rational thinking side of your brain, freeing up the more intuitive, the feeling, the part of our brain that doesn't think in words. It releases that to release its own information across to the language processing side. And then, you know, your own innate wisdom and your insight and your everything that you hold in your body, as well as your mind, has a chance to be felt or heard. So I think, you know, you can, what's wonderful about being able to look at the labyrinth through a transdisciplinary lens, as we are encouraged to at CIIS, is that it opens up all these amazing sort of facets to it. And it really is like looking at a sort of prism or a holographic entity. It's fascinating.
It is, and I think, like, to that too, because we're exploring like the spectrum of our emotions. Because what also comes to mind, like when you're talking about entities and like containers or like confinement or like walls, is like the shadow side, the darker side of it too. Because once you're in the labyrinth, you're in it. There's different emotions that you feel when you get this sensation of being lost and not knowing where you are, or this disorientation. And when we're in this space and in this aspect of being disoriented, or like we're kind of turned around within the shadows, what then is the purpose of the labyrinth for that? Because I think we as a collective attribute a lot of negativity to the dark side, or to talking about working through our shadow side. Like, we live in this culture, especially in America, of toxic positivity, where everybody has to be love and light all the time, and you know, we just don't go into these things. We don't express our emotions. I don't know if it's this patriarchal kind of thing, or like just a number of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think, am I right in thinking that what you're talking about is known as spiritual bypassing?
Maybe. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, that's a fairly new term to me, but my understanding is that, you know, when you adopt spiritual attitudes or behaviors that are very much in line with what you're saying, Kelsey, you know, about how it's all love and light and everything's always positive, but you're not actually doing the inner work. You're not actually going into those shadows and, you know, sort of deconstructing yourself, then that's known as spiritual bypassing. And I think that's common.
I wonder too then, because even from the artistic side of things, there are a lot of creative individuals who use the art and the beauty as this facade to push more devious measures, or like we've got the like Illuminati theories about, you know, people within Hollywood or within the music who are using, you know, all these very subliminal messages to push on and perpetuate negative agendas or dark agendas or evil agendas, if you would.
Mm.
But they're disguised as something beautiful, or just they're disguised as something they're not, right? This where we get into the idea of the entity within the labyrinth is chasing us, right? This thing that we're trying to escape.
Mm.
So how do we tell the difference? How do we know?
Well, so yeah, you're right. The labyrinth does have two completely contradictory meanings. Um, there is the labyrinth that has the Minotaur in the center, and that's probably one of the oldest stories that we have featuring the labyrinth. And the labyrinth in that story is a dark place with lots of twists and turns, and it's very difficult to find your way out once you're in. The labyrinth that I work with for healing and consciousness expansion is a unicursal path labyrinth, which means that there is just one path that you follow, and as long as you keep walking, you will eventually arrive in the center. And then you retrace your steps to leave. So we have here a very clear way to the center or to the soul. And we also have here in the same word, the same metaphor, somewhere where it's easy to get lost. And I think it's very important, Kelsey, that you've brought this up, because there is it's hard work. Inner work is hard work, and committing to unraveling the truth of yourself is messy, and it will have you on your knees, and you will break down. And again, you know, going back to the positivity and love and light brigade, you know, without this awareness of what breakdown is and its purpose as a stage of growth, then continuing to medicate, for example, what could be a breakdown moment is a precursor to breakthrough. This is the thing. So if we're medicating breakdowns and seeing them as a pathological problem, then we are actually disallowing people the opportunity for personal and spiritual growth.
I think that's beautiful. And allowing people, or holding space for people to go through that in and of itself is challenging, and can be challenging to not absorb that, or to not get drawn into somebody else's labyrinth while trying to draw your own labyrinth. Metaphorically speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it can be so tempting to want to walk every labyrinth and to like just comb through everything with, you know, the fine tooth, where you just pick apart in detail every little bit. But like the rabbit holes, right, where you just keep diving in and diving in and diving in.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that once you acknowledge that that is there, and the potential for the rabbit hole to appear in front of you can happen at any time, then you also start to realize that healing it's not just a process, it's almost a way of life. It's an ongoing attitude, really. It's not like, you know, you do A, B, and C, and then, hey, I'm healed. Because we have depths that we're not aware of. you know.
Do you think it's odd, or do you think there's some strange synchronicity that with like the timing of the COVID and with where you're at in your research, that there's like more power to you in this, like more understanding and like a deeper connection to your work because of it?
I mean, I don't think that anyone who's in the line of work that we are cannot feel some, you know, synchronicity about being here now with all of this going on. You know, we're in the business of personal and social transformation, and guess what? Suddenly everybody's starting to talk about it because we're facing it full on, you know. So yeah, I mean, I'm very aware of where I am and what I'm doing, and I'm trying to keep moving forward, but I'm placing my feet very carefully because the timing of everything is always crucial. You know, it's not what you do, it's when you do it as much as how you do it. So I think, yeah, it's always been about the labyrinth. What I'm, you know, it's not about me. I'm just trying to be a spokesperson for it, I suppose, and yeah, figuring out how to get the message out there so that it can help people.
I think you make a good point too when it comes to timing, because something that I've been working through with myself, especially with this semester, is although I'm actively doing my research, I feel like I could focus on my dissertation and then just do with that, but I'd miss out on all the coursework,
Mm.
which kind of loses the point of it. And so I've just found that in being able to forgive myself or just allow the divine timing of it to really resonate with me, to know that if I were to have tried to do this kind of work or to do what I've wanted to do anytime sooner, it wouldn't have worked, or it wouldn't have stuck because people wouldn't have been ready for it. But now that the world is coming to this awareness, like it is, like you're saying, it's just now coming to this idea where it's like, let's talk about transformation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we're like, hey, we can do that with you.
10 years. Right? And it's so,
yeah, it's you know, there's all sorts of ready, isn't there? You need to be ready, and the message or whatever it is you feel that you're trying to incubate, that also needs to be ready, as well as
other
well,
people
yeah,
to be
other people
ready.
being ready. And I mean, I think you have to let go of that. You know, you've got to
Right.
put your stuff out there and trust that the people who are ready will find their way to it.
It's interesting too, and I think what a nice gift to give the world and to give the collective consciousness and to give people at this point in time, because to give people the opportunity to explore their own path. Because again, it's a labyrinth, you get to walk your own path, like you're saying. Then through that journey, you get to find your own creative expression, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
trust and you allow and you put one foot in front of the other, and you do the work. And it's
that's right.
hard and it's messy, but that's what creation is.
It's hard and it's messy, but you're supported by the divine cosmic patterning of the universe. You know, I mean, a human being springs from this pattern. So, trusting that you will be held as you move is an important part of personal growth, I think. You know, we don't, it's so hard because as a human being, I think we're sort of wired to want we're sort of wired for certainty. We want to we want things pinned down and made certain, and we're living in a reality that it's the uncertainty of it is an indication of its creativity. So it's walking a very fine line, finding that balance all the time between, you can rely on the structure for your certainty and to hold you, and then within that there is freedom to diverge and create in whichever way you're called to doing. So it's both and. That's the thing about the labyrinth. The labyrinth helps to shift perspective to a both and way of looking at things. Just like the labyrinth itself, it's both messy and clear. It's both dark and light. The shifting perspective is really, I think, what's needed in widespread around the world at the moment.
And I think too, it shifts perspective in a very grounded way too, like brain training, like in to draw out the pattern and to make the dots and to make the connections. It's not necessarily intuitive right off the bat. You're programming your hand, right, and your brain's like hand-eye coordination at that point too. So when you're talking about the biosphere and biology, not only are we talking about like retraining the mind side of it, it's retraining the body. And if you do it on a large scale and you actually walk the thing, like doing the finger versus using your feet, it's challenging on a physical level too.
Yeah, and wholly rewarding. I mean, I think I love nothing more. Well, maybe my children, possibly my husband. But I mean, to go to the beach and there's this open expanse of untouched sand. And then, that's like a cathedral for me. I enter that space. I ask for permission to enter the space. And the practice that I have been developing and that I'm writing and researching about at the moment, I'm calling an eco-spiritual labyrinth practice, because it's very much about stepping into the grand conversation, which is the interrelational reality of our world, where we don't exist except in relationship. And that's not just with people, that's with everything that we see. So down on the beach, stepping into the cathedral, if you like, of this beautiful space, and then inviting spirit ancestors, talking to them through the wind, asking the water to take the energy that I'm putting into the labyrinth as I'm drawing it, and I'm invoking or singing sometimes my intentions. I recite the names of people who I know especially need healing or who ask me to do that. And then it just becomes this very profound, sacred, wholly connected, conscious interaction with the cosmos. And people have had very powerful experiences doing this. I've witnessed, they've told me. And it would be my dream for everybody to be able to experience that.
My powerful experience with this and you and the synchronicity of it for me, as I'm thinking about this as you're talking, and like the timing of it's just all lining up perfectly, is we've been talking about wanting to connect here on my show here for a few months, and have been waiting for the perfect time to unfold. And in my space, I've been going through my studio and consolidating and getting myself organized and just putting pieces together. And I think maybe a week and a half ago or so, I found the stack of papers of the notes, or the like sketch notebook thing that I had created in our last conversation with the labyrinths, and then all the note pieces of where I had left off with my notes with school, and especially in my class, I think where you're a TA with Dan Crow,
Yeah.
which is like this stop point where I just had to take a leave of absence, and I've really gotten into perspective what I need in order to achieve the goals that I want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And here, as we're having this conversation, I have like out on my floor a big noteboard with like sketch paper and one of these labyrinth pieces, and it's lined up with the notes and the steps, and I think, to speak to the powerful experiences and connecting with this and connecting with timing and the intention of it, when we connect to the labyrinth, to our creative practice, to the transformative, energetic aspect of it, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and trust and allow things to unfold naturally, then these synchronicities pop up and these things happen. And what if we listen to them, right? And if we acknowledge the cues when they're in front of us, what a great, amazing opportunity to step into alignment with that path, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. It's sort of, it's of course you have to keep doing what you're doing. It's not, you can't just sort of sit back completely and be la 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 la. I think I'll just see what the universe is going to throw my way today. But there is a sort of element of that as well. I think, you know, you can't. It's again, it's this idea of structure and space. So I'm glad to hear that you had a positive experience and it helped you.
And it is still helping. I think
Oh, good.
in going through this process, or it's still a tool that I've learned how to. It's like it creates a bridge. It fills in the gaps. It helps to create containers for the ideas, and then also gives the visual perspective in a way. And what a neat tool.
Hmm. Yeah, that's have you heard of a guy called Robert Edward Grant?
I don't believe so.
He he's a sort of modern day Leonardo da Vinci kind of character, but he does a lot of sacred geometry drawing. And he has an Instagram and a Facebook page, I think, and for the first, I think it might be finished, but the videos will still be available. He was doing sort of live drawing sessions, and anyone could just drop in and follow along with him. But I was reading some of the comments on his page, and people say, you know, just even drawing and working with these sacred forms has a very powerful effect on their bodies and the way that they think and create. So, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. You've tuned into it. Sounds like.
I think there's a lot of implications there for art therapy, or for at least the legitimacy behind art therapy, and to get away from all like the woo-woo side of it.
Hmm.
Well, before I had applied to the program at CIIS, I had applied to the program, art therapy program at Naropa, but I didn't get into the program. They told me my interests were too diverse. But how true, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. That's and what's interesting about education or the academy at the moment is that it's really a time of grand integration. You know, that we've had many years of quite siloed thinking, where
Yeah, I think to that the licensing of it, right? We're very specific ideas of what things should look like. We've got like 4 minutes or so until we go on break.
Okay.
And then we get to come in for a second hour.
Okay.
I just want to bring our attention and our awareness to that, just so we can get ready to, I guess, like shift our topic into the second hour. And I don't know if there's something specific that you want to talk about or that you want to look at in the next hour either.
I'm happy to go with the flow.
Cool. I'm really enjoying this, and I hope everybody else is too. I feel somewhat disconnected from the chat rooms, and I haven't checked in with any of my social media stuff this morning, and I think it's perfect that I just get to be here in present time with you and to have this conversation, because I think if anything in like the creative practice, we're using art tools and healing and dealing with the energetics, because it is a lot of work and it can be very draining, but like I think what keeps me going and keeps me connected to it is the phenomena side of it, and these like just phenomenal breakthroughs that come from the breakdowns and the aha moments.
Yeah, they're they're crucial parts of the process, definitely.
Why labyrinths in the first place? You have 2 minutes. Why labyrinths?
Yeah, well, I was desperate. I was in Japan. There was no recourse for counselling or anyone to talk to, no close friends or family. And like I said, I had a book, and it was just it kept sort of niggling me. I should try that. I should try that. And I pulled it out and I looked at it, and I was just instantly pulled in. So I don't know. It needed me, and I needed it, perhaps.
They're like little portals or vortices, right? That suck you in.
Yeah, they certainly do.
The openness to the other opportunities and things.
Yeah.
Well, that's neat. Is there somewhere online where people can find you, Jacqueline?
I have the best place to find me probably would be Instagram. I have an Instagram account. I don't have a website or anything like that. I'm still forming myself with a public sort of face. So yeah, I can give you the link for my Instagram page if anyone's interested.
That would be cool. If you're in the chat room still, I think plug it into the chat room. That would be fun. Instagram, I think, counts as a website.
Okay, I think I'm in the chat room. I think I'm in there's only one chat room, isn't there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay,
I had a problem getting into it last week too, so unfortunately I'm sorry I can't say hellos to all the people in there this morning, but hello to the Revolution Radio chat room and the groups. And I think we've got the background music playing, so we can put ourselves on mute, Jacqueline, and go take a 5-minute break if we need to, and stretch, take care of some business, and then at 1 minute after the hour, we'll come back and we'll dive back into our labyrinths and perhaps give people an idea of how they can draw their own.
Great. Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. See you in a few minutes. Welcome back, Revolution Radio. Welcome back to Studio A. Welcome back to Cultivating Consciousness. I'm Kelsey Sweet. I'm still eating breakfast. I'm still taking a break. But it's my birthday today, so I can eat chocolate chip cookies at 4 a.m. my time if I want to. 4 a.m. my time if I want to. So, hello and good morning. And if you're just now joining us, or if you've just joined us recently here on Revolution Radio, and you haven't had an opportunity to, and you want to say happy birthday to me, or you want to help support the radio, please go ahead and go to freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, and find your way to our Patreon page, whatever it is you need to do, and contribute. Keep this going. Keep this voicing, and allow the rest of us to hold space for everyone else and share some amazing information while I'm chewing up my food and trying to get through this chocolate chip cookie this morning. Just a regular chocolate chip cookie, nothing exciting in there. Not even homemade. It's delicious though, I'm enjoying it. It's cultivating consciousness and it's mindfulness. A picture in your head, if you can, if you like chocolate chip cookies, chocolate chip cookie melting in your mouth. Yum, yum, yum. Anyway, I'm here this morning with my lovely friend and colleague, Jacqueline Kurio, who is a phenomenal artist, academic, mother, friend, just amazing, neat person. And we're talking about Labyrinths this morning and the power of labyrinths, and how, especially during this very collective transformative time, how we can use these different tools to heal ourselves, heal the world, feel better, do what we need to do to, I guess, co-create the next level or the next ascension of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we were saying earlier about how my labyrinth practice includes communion with the world. And I think it's in recognition of our connection and our interconnectedness with everything that's where the potential for healing is, because it's available to everybody all of the time through being alive and through being aware of the aliveness of the world.
I agree. My kitty just came in the room, speaking of the aliveness of the world.
Wonderful.
He's going to join us. His name's Coyote Jones.
Hello.
We'll hold space for the kitties in the morning. Okay, well, so I get to bring myself back to present time. I think it's all going back to the intention of this whole process for me, and like why do we create, right? Why do we do this sort of work in the first place? And I lost my train of thought, and I wanted to have here. So can you bring me back to center point?
Yeah. Well, just I suppose I'm looking at a small stack of books here, connected with what I'm talking about, and it's this idea of the world being alive, and of how this very simple fact of our aliveness is what has been lost in looking at the world as simply resources to be exploited for our use only. This paradigm, this perspective that currently rules our global systems is denying the aliveness of the world. And in doing so, it's denying us our own aliveness. So, you know, getting outside and doing anything to open yourself up to the presence of the world, of other beings, of just existence, is a very powerful and empowering and healing thing to do. And I do it with Labyrinths. You know, I mean, that's something that I've brought the two things together. But there are all sorts of other practices that people do to sort of try and attune themselves to nature and the natural world, like forest bathing, for example. In Japan, they say Shinrin Yoku, and this idea of walking into a forest and opening yourself up, and then this sort of exchange of energy and information can occur that can be healing on a cellular level, I believe, and spiritual as well, you know.
My point was going to be into like the responsibility of it. And that's exactly what you're speaking to. Because as an art teacher, one of the first things that I teach, and I keep bringing this up throughout my shows, is that if you're creating something, because this is consciousness, and if we're cultivating conscious creativity or cultivating conscious creative communities, then the things that we're creating, we want to do so responsibly. It kind of pushes beyond that intention, where we have to take into consideration what the collective is experiencing and what Mother Nature is going through, and how our creations, whatever it is, or how our interactions with the world, I mean, be it forest bathing or dancing in the street or whatever the creative connection, the expression looks like, if it's authentic and if it's meant to heal the self and meant to heal the world, we've got some amazing creative power, co-creative power in that space.
Yeah, I think we have, and I hope, you know, very much that that's going to be part of the, you know, what I'm able to put out into the world is this strong feeling of hope, because, you know, we're sort of looking around and thinking, well, there are all these problems, the climate's changing, there's plastic everywhere, and, you know, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And as we're looking at them, we're just thinking, oh God, now we've got to fix all this. But the truth is that we don't have to do it on our own. You know, we can work, if we can open ourselves up to the wisdom of the world that we are a part of, then the conversation will include a sort of a collective knowing that can come through, that can far exceed what one individual could think with their own mind on their own.
I think to that too, and to speak to like the other dynamics, and also to the books that are surrounding us. One of the books that I have around me is like quantum activism.
Oh, so, wow.
Because I think too, one thing that I have found when it comes to people and like creative expression, they either like want to share it with people, or they like it's something that they keep very private to themselves. And I think when it comes to global change and these radical transformations, through even just the subtlest, smallest thing you can do for yourself, like the butterfly effect, it can have a huge ripple. But I think in order for that to happen, that connection to your channel and that connection to sourced energy has to be very disciplined. It has to be well practiced. But I think that's why we've got those monks, right, who or these spiritually practiced people who spend many times just sitting there, but they're not just sitting there, right? They're beginning to explore these other realms or these other planes of existence, these other aspects of consciousness. And what I think it's really neat about the work that you do, that I think is similar to what I'm trying to accomplish within the academic work, is bringing the arts into advanced academia. Because you can't get a PhD in art, right? Like an MFA is a terminal degree, so it's not like you can just draw labyrinths and be handed a PhD.
No, that would be nice though, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it? But at the same time, you can't just research the labyrinths either, and you're not just like researching this concept of labyrinths and being handed a PhD. You're being called to do the creative work, to do the actual practice, to do the art.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's what came first. So I started drawing them on the beach, and I suppose I'd been about twice when there was that huge earthquake in Japan, the Tohoku earthquake. I don't know if you remember. It was March 2011, and we were about 300 kilometers south of that. So we felt it very strongly. We lost power when it happened, and so we didn't know what was going on. We didn't really find out until the next day, when we saw images on the TV. We went into a friend's house, and it was just, I can't describe the effect on my body because there's just no words, but it was very profound. And then the day after that, so 2 days after it happened, I woke up and it was such a beautiful day. And we were sort of, just less than 48 hours since it had happened, but we were all very aware of the ongoing situation at the nuclear power facility. And we were waiting to hear the government maybe ordering some sort of evacuation order, or but there just wasn't really very much information. And I woke up and I just needed to go outside and touch the earth and the ocean. So we went to the beach where I'd been drawing these labyrinths, and I stood in the water for a long time. And I could my whole body was just feeling these waves of sadness. And I think it occurred to me that, I'd started on this journey of healing for myself. I was very aware of my own need for healing. But my experience in the water that day gave me the feeling that it's all of us and the planet that are in need of healing at this time. So it was a very profound experience, and I went away and I sat with this for a while, and it seemed, I suppose, a natural progression for me. Okay, well, I'm doing these healing labyrinths on the beach for me, so I'll incorporate healing for everybody and the planet as I'm doing it, and I'll ask the water especially to take this energy and distribute it. So it's not just a spiritual intention. I'm actually working with the water on that sort of molecular level, using sort of quantum physics and what I knew about water at the time, and sent it out, to go everywhere. So I started doing that, and then, as I was going along, I felt that I was having quite profound experiences, and what I thought I was seeing was something that was much bigger than I could really fully understand. So I wrote a book about it. This was in 2014, so I've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years by now. And it was absolutely rubbish, this book. And I thought, I need to know more to be able to to understand this properly and explain it in the way that it needs to be explained or presented or offered. And then that was what took me to CIA. It was by chance, or was it synchronicity again? Seeing the advert for CIS and then finding my way there. And I was CIS, I had no idea who they were. And I clicked on their website, and the cover photo showed the Labyrinth at Land's End. And without even reading anything, I thought, right, that's it. That's the place I need to be.
It
And
feels like home, huh?
Yeah, it was totally like that. It really was. It really was. And then the day that I flew to San Francisco for the first intensive, I remember being so nervous. I was watching the door on the plane thinking, I could still got time to, jump off and not go. But that flight, we went through we flew through the eclipse that was happening that year. So that felt quite sort of meaningful. I thought, whatever it is I'm going to do, the people that I'm going to meet here are essential. And it was all about the people, really. And I was right, because it brought me to you.
Well, I think too, because one of my previous guests, I think in January or maybe the very beginning of February, we spoke. But another one of our colleagues, Elisa Boots, came on.
Oh, great.
She didn't end up going through the program, and she ended up dropping out of the program, but we stayed in contact. And she had a similar experience where like you going through this experience with the earthquake in Japan, her experience was with the Twin Towers here in New York, where there's this somewhat like being there and being present with this big catastrophe, this change, but having a somewhat dissociated or delayed response to it in a way. She was telling me how different people around her were having these different experiences and how some of them were very direct, but how, like her father, who had just left before this, had turned on the radio and was doing whatever, and all this was happening behind him, and he just didn't look in the rearview mirror. Wasn't even aware of it until a couple of days later. He's like, what do you mean? I was just there.
Right.
So there's so many different levels and layers in which I think people come to these very profound connections to consciousness, or it's that wake-up call. And I think the collective, or at least the energy of people that we're working with, it's very integrated in that sense. But it seems like all of us in some form or another have gone through this like almost radical trauma in some sort of way that has aligned us with the work that we do. And the trauma is very specific to our individual works. It's not necessarily true for all peoples, but what I'm fascinated by this is that integral connection, or the integral approach to these things. And I'm curious to know, with your Labyrinths, what are the other books around you? Like what other sort of knowledge bases are you integrating or incorporating into your work? You're talking about water studies, right, and quantum physics. So
yes, yeah, and neuroscience. I think integrating science and spirituality is a kind of a key thing that's emerging through different academic endeavors. And I think I don't know if it was initiated, but I think a big part of this contribution came from Fritjof Capra, who's based in California. And he wrote a book called the Tao of physics. And through being a physicist, and then also through having a practice of meditation based on Eastern mysticism, he came to the sort of realization that these two almost oppositional fields were actually talking about the world in the same way. They were just looking at it through different lenses. And I think he was really at the forefront of starting this kind of work, which is ongoing. And I see, so I suppose I see what I'm doing within that. So yeah, neuroscience, and there's a lot of research done on the wounded healer or the wounded researcher. Yeah, I have a book of that title, The Wounded Researcher, Research with Soul in Mind. So yeah, this, integration is where it's at, baby.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any one way that we can really box ourselves in at this time. I think we're well aware that we're a globalized collective, that there are people of so many various cultures and backgrounds, and we're recognizing, like you're saying, that we have such different lenses for the same, I think, inherent experience in our heart and at our core and in our soul. And maybe this is that idea where everything is one and everything unifies and everything comes together, the one love. That's where, it starts getting really mushy and we start falling back into the realm of the positivity and higher vibrations and stuff. But
it's there. It is there, though, isn't it?
It's there.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth in it. Or my favorite part about the water studies is I always get the guy's name wrong, so I'm not even going to try it.
Oh, it's Masaru Emoto.
Yes. Yeah. I switch my, I don't know. I have a hard time with this one. But yeah, I'm not a name person. For whatever reason, like when I see somebody, I call them something else in my head. Like I'm such a visual person. Like I feel like I attribute symbols and colors and other things, or like there's so much information that comes through with people. But what I like work is he's talking about how water does the same thing. You give it a word, you give it a title, you give it a meaning, you put in the intention to it, and the water responds on a molecular level with this crystallization pattern.
Yeah, and I've been recently advised not to quote him in my dissertation because he's regarded as a sort of a bit of a maverick. But I have found other scientists who are saying what he's saying, with all of the sort of scientific evidence and language to explain it in that frame. And so I don't think what's been difficult has been, I think it's been difficult to replicate his experiments with any great degree of success. So but there are other ways, of looking at it. And I think one book that particularly comes to mind is called Water Codes, and that's by Dr. Carly Newday is her name.
This artist, have you seen her? I don't know her name either, but her presentation or her installment basically is herself sitting on the floor, and she's surrounded by these like shallow basins of water, And she has them connected to electrodes in different ways. And so her installation is her feeling and her having these emotional experiences and then projecting these emotional, I don't know that projecting is the right word, but the emotions are transmitted into these bowls of water, and then they resonate with different patterns depending on her emotion.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. I haven't heard of her.
I wish I knew what her name was. I need to get better at this, or like just like have a name board where I write everything down 25 times. Like,
The only way I can remember names is to see the word. So I'm also prompted visually. And one way is I always, oh, how do you spell that? And then I get them to spell it out, and then I can kind of commit it to memory in a visual way.
that's
try
cool.
try that.
I might try that because I like spelling. I'm pretty good with spelling, but I've learned with myself as an artist when it comes to drawing that like I'm not dyslexic. I don't know what it's called, but like I get things inverted or like I just get things backwards. And like trying to figure out 3-point perspective for me was such a struggle because everything just comes out backwards.
You should try mirror drawing, maybe.
I've had to for things, or like I've like turning things upside down really helps. And I've
Oh,
learned
okay.
that even with like playing the guitar or like learning music, like the guitar is much easier upside down and backwards. Like if I can take my visual head out of it.
Yeah.
I, so like that one's been a struggle for me, but like once I get it, I get it. Or kind of like the same thing with math. Like conceptually, it makes sense, but trying to get my hand to do it, or even like with video games, I have to play video games on the inverted setting. Or like up
Really?
and down is up. Yeah, otherwise I end up in a corner and I can't get out.
Wow. Sounds like I wonder if something is not crossed that should be, or something. Anyway, we're all wired so uniquely.
Right.
It's crazy to think that this idea that there's one truth or one way of perceiving things is the fact that that's persisted for so long is quite miraculous, really, in a not good way.
One of the things that I've learned too in being an art teacher when it comes to people's perspective and how they connect to work or like their learning styles. Like they're with art, there's either line kids or there's color kids. Or like we say in school, like there's math kids or there's English kids. Like within the world of art, I've noticed there's either line kids or there are color kids. I'm the color kid. I understand color. I understand like how to layer color to create depth and illusion, or like how the eye perceives color to create form and shape. But when it comes to line, like forget about it. I'm totally an abstract artist. Like I can, and I've proved to myself through my rigorous art studies and training that I can draw photorealistically. You know, give me a picture, I can do it. But I don't like it.
No.
It's not my connection. It's not my true like way of understanding how I perceive the world, because I perceive the world as light and I perceive it as color, and I don't necessarily see a definitive edge to everything. And so when it comes to drawing, or even when it comes to the labyrinths, I've had to learn to give myself a lot of forgiveness, because I like in my work to use a lot of sacred geometry. But it's free form. I've allowed and I've given myself the permission to be very loose with my lines and to be very sketch-like and to be very intentional with how I try to, I guess, pull in or like find the middle ground between all of the things. So it becomes very energetic.
Mm.
And I do my best to get my judgment out of the way. And I can relate to my artwork, and to, like, I can have this very personal experience, and I can have this very, like, euphoric and transformative experience within myself. But when it comes to bringing that out to the collective, when it comes to sharing that, when it comes to, I guess, trying to find the middle ground and heal with others in that, that's where I just find that conflict can arise. Or if people aren't open to communication, or like all these like constraints within their language, and they're not open to going down into these labyrinths, like we just get nowhere.
Mm.
And so,
Yeah, it can be hard to know, where to connect or how to connect with others. And I mean, I think that it's coming back again maybe to what we were talking about earlier with regards to letting go.
mm-hmm.
And, not having, as hard as it is, having an expectation of a certain outcome. Can actually cause tremendous frustration and raise all sorts of problems within the creative process, whether it's collaborative or not.
Do you think collectively we're having the struggles and the things that we are, and that things are showing up the way that they are because of these miscommunications, because of people are so disconnected from all of that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't profess to really know anything about why things are the way they are, or I think that, we're obviously living in a way that is unsustainable for the planet, and the whole system has, the more fixed things become, the paradox, this is the thing, okay? Nature, like the labyrinth we were talking about before, one of the wisdoms that you can learn from the labyrinth is the paradoxical nature of reality.
Mm.
So we've talked about how our mind seeks certainty, and then this has now been taken to the extreme where everything has become so fixed. But actually, what happens when the more you fix things in nature, the more vulnerable they become, the more susceptible they become to breaking. Think about an egg. It's the most perfectly formed, perfect thing, and yet it's also incredibly fragile. So that's what we're seeing. We've got all these systems, and the way of doing things is becoming so fixed, and yet it's taken this thing that's invisible. It's so small we can't even see it. It's not even actually a virus. We keep talking about it as a virus. It's not. It's a protein. It's on its way to becoming something like a virus. So this is entered our system, and it's immediately shown all the cracks, and it's all the light is now coming into the cracks. And I think that's where we are. We're having a collective breakdown / breakthrough.
What a perfect time to talk about labyrinths too, in it all.
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, to do that. You asking me along to do that today, and it does. And I would like, I don't know how to get it out there, but I think I'm starting with you here today anyway.
I think that's cool, and I hope that my intention for you in this space is to also give you a space to synthesize all this, because I'm sure you've just been inundated with so much information, and I know what it takes to write one of these papers, much less to like, because you're much further into this program than I am. Like you, good job.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just finished 3 years. I've just passed my comprehensive exams. Yay.
Yeah.
Which means I now move into writing and then defending my proposal. So this is being through the classes is definitely an ending of sorts. And I think you're right. You know, there's a I came. I suppose I had the inquiry already. I've been doing the research. You know, I came because I wanted to understand what it was that I'd been touching, if you like, and then because it felt so powerful, how to share it. Um, but the classes themselves were actually absolutely crucial for me. And gosh, what a great privilege to have such an amazing education. The the professors and the whole structure of our course at CIS is just exemplary, and I really hope that now there is going to be so much more online. You know, all the good things that we've been doing and learning can be shared, you know, far and wide.
I hope so too. I think it's such important work, and the professors you're right are just amazing people, and I got to go through the master's program through this like 6 years ago, I think, is when I graduated. The Facebook just reminded me the other day. I was like, wow, 6 years already of having a master's degree and I've done nothing with it. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
What do
still
you
trying to
mean?
figure out how to.
You've moved from there to here.
No, I feel like I've done a lot with this, and
Yeah.
the stuff that I've done, it's just how it's. mm, I'm waiting for the rain to come down on the seeds, you know, so everything can flourish.
Yes,
So that
yes,
I can
yes.
continue with this work, 'cause it's just where I'm at in it all. But I think where I also got stuck in this, and where I've just been really allowing the knowledge to ferment, is in this course that ETA'd with for Dan, and the question of like when you have to like be your 98-year-old self, and you have to look back at your life, right? And you have to come up with like the top 10 things that you've achieved in your life.
Mm.
Like this, that's just floored me. It feels like it's one of the like the most simple questions, but it has just like floored me when it comes to understanding, or at least unleashing within me the permission to do whatever it is that I possibly think I could ever do and want to do.
Right. So, like giving yourself permission to dream,
Yeah.
almost.
You had
Mm.
mentioned dreams earlier, that during the first hour too, and a lot of the work through CIS is dream studies too. That pops up, or when you go into these metaphors and archetypes, and
Mm.
same thing with the arts. It's working within archetypes and shapes and meanings, and breaking things apart and understanding the subliminal parts. But what what a mind blowing just connection to the self and the world. Like I don't how and I wonder if this is the same for the listeners and for people out there, or like for the collective. Like I feel like people are in this state of fear, but more than anything of like fearing the worst things that could happen. They fear the best things that could happen.
Mm.
And like the vulnerabilities of really walking that path and really staying in that power and like really shining bright and co-creating things. There's a lot of responsibility in that.
Mm.
And I think once we know something and we begin to take responsibility for these things and we begin to see what things can be, that's a big call to action. And I think if we're not all in alignment with that and we become hyper aware of all the subtle energies and all the subtle things and motives and all the toxicities and all the things that people haven't healed, like as the healers, like it's a little overwhelming, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But, you know, I think it's healing is really an attitude that I'm hoping, you know, if people can see how, no, I don't want to make it sound trite and say it's easy, because it's not that it's easy, but it's just that it is accessible. It's freely accessible through the fact of just being alive in an enlivened universe. So, you know, I think, yeah, it's very hard not to sort of want to take it all on, you know. And I realized looking back, you know, God, how arrogant I was to think, oh yes, I can do this and I can heal the world. And I didn't. It wasn't that I thought I could do it all by myself, but I just thought that, you know, just making a contribution, putting that awareness out there and the love and just intentionally, consciously injecting love into the world, without any sort of thinking. Like I said, I'm not thinking about any outcome at all. Just focusing on the process and the purity of my intention. And yeah, I mean, I believe everybody has the potential to be able to do that in some way, even a tiny way in their daily lives. And, you know, bringing things back from a global, we do have a global perspective, and we need to cultivate a sort of planetary consciousness where we're able to look at a tree and see that it's also me, you know, and that sort of thing. But to make it manageable, it just start with yourself, and then like a stone in a pond, there's ripples that go out, and it will start to extend. And you know, you can, if the cascade effect can be worked out, if you can affect change to 13% of something, then a mathematical equation of a cascade effect kicks in, and it sort of ripples and spreads out. And then you can only do what you can do as one person, I think.
I have this picture in my head of putting in like a new meaning to, or a new idea on making love, or understanding what self-love is. Or because what came through to me the other day through another dear friend of mine is, when it comes to like self-love, there's compassion, there's all these deeper understandings, but in opening yourself up to grace and allowing yourself to just be and accept things as they are, then there aren't all these other attachments onto or expectations of what something should look like or how it should be. So it's just this pure state of love. And when we're artists and we're creating something, and we're making something, it's a direct connection with ourselves and opening ourselves up to this channel and allowing this flow to come through, the spiritual flow, and being able to empathize enough with ourselves authentically in such a way where the things that we're making, the way that we're exchanging our interactions are of this loving concept. And I think, unfortunately, our society has done this thing to pervert that notion of what love is and what creation is and what procreation is and co-creation is. And I think people get down to this idea, especially within media, and we were talking about like false advertising, right? Or like people who sell sex, that sort of a thing. Like, that's not the sort of energy and vibration that we're talking about here, that we're trying to perpetuate and that we're trying to move. I think when we're talking about love and healing and this opposite, I don't want to say reaction, but maybe the opposite reaction to destruction is creation. Right? And everybody's been in the space of hate and anger and rage and projecting that hate.
Well, because what we've cultivated is actually a death culture. You know, it's a culture that doesn't recognize that we are living in a living world.
People say one thing and then they often seem to mean another. So
yeah, I think that comes, I think, from all the sort of confusion and chaos in the airwaves. Don't you think?
Do you like the Labyrinths because it like takes the language out, like it takes the word out of it, and it again just becomes more about the process and the action and connecting the mind.
It's poetry. You know, poetry is the response that you feel beneath words. So that's very insightful of you, I think, to say it like that and to say it like that.
Insightful of you to say it like that. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And, you know, a book that I'm reading at the moment, one of my current loves, is called Matter and Desire by Andreas Weber. And the subtitle is An Erotic Ecology. And he talks about how really, you know, the sort of implicate force of nature is desire, because it's what we know of as desire. It's a yearning to reach out and touch that which is perceived as other.
Well, I'm learning too, as being a new mother, that and having a toddler, right? That's all about that. All he wants is, I need this, mine, right? Like it's just meeting those instant desires and being in present time. And what an amazing way to learn how to be very specific with language.
And also to learn when words aren't needed.
Yeah.
You know, cultivating all the ways that we can communicate without words. That's something that I learned living in Japan, I think. Probably because because my knowledge of Japanese was so small that I had to get really good at interpreting everything else that was going on in the room. And it's just that, you know, it's putting yourself somewhere where you just have no points of reference really, other than being a human being. And that's great for tuning you into to that sort of thing, especially with Japanese people who are so sort of sensitive to group harmonics and the energy in the room and that kind of thing. So that was a great privilege, I think, to spend time over there.
I think we take for granted here in the West too so much of how little we really know about our communications. Like, if 85% of our communication is nonverbal, like, that's words are such a small percentage of our communication, in our actions. So, like, on one hand, it could be saying that because they're not a big percentage, they don't have a big influence. But at the same time, because there's such a small percentage of influence that they hold that much more power if we learn how to wield them and use them wisely.
Yeah, and how inadequate they are, you know. I mean, I don't really feel that we've got adequate words to describe the whole range and depths of feelings that we feel.
I don't think so either. Does that take us into the realm of telepathy then? Like, if we're ascending to the next level of humanity, then we're just not going to need words and we're just...
Well, I don't know. I like to think that we develop language through singing, and maybe that would be, you know, maybe we could return. If you sing what everything you're trying to say, it's quite hard to say things unnecessarily or thoughtlessly or unkindly or...
The vibration, I think, or the attunement to the vibration becomes much more important than when we're singing.
Yes.
Then again, it becomes about the structure. It becomes about the labyrinth. It becomes about the container that we're trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
Because words feel good. Like, it feels good to talk. It feels good to use a voice. It feels good to say nice things and to have loving interactions. And it doesn't feel good to argue, and it doesn't feel good to not say nice things, you know?
Yeah, I think I'm really, you're really exposing me to this today, and I can see through your work as well here on the radio show how skillful and masterful you are at using your voice.
I haven't used it in a really long time, and I am beyond grateful for being allowed and given the opportunity to explore it, because I've put a lot of intention into my meditations, into the throat chakra and clearing the throat chakra and doing the work behind it from many different levels. And I've journaled most of my life, and I process all my psyche stuff through my artwork very conscientiously. And but to get to say it out loud and to get to be in present time in a life space at such a vulnerable hour in the morning, like it's really putting me in a space where I have to be very accountable for myself and be very conscientious, because I do feel like it's a responsibility that I have to maintain to other people. And I have amazing mentors within this platform who have, through their strengths and what they talk about, you know, and their confidence and their work, really give me the practice, I guess, in building that confidence, because this is weird stuff to talk about. You know, like, it's not every day that people really are exposed to this sort of understanding of relating to the world. You know, and I think the greatest thing about radio is it takes the visual stuff out of it. So there's not other distractions. Right.
I prefer, when I talk to somebody, to just speak. I don't really like the video camera thing, really.
I think it depends. I think there's kind of the time and the space for everything. And I think that to get the opportunity to connect with such amazing, brilliant people like yourself and the other people I've been so lucky enough to have as guests on so far, I get to learn so much, and it's such a humbling space. Oh, I love you, and I'm so grateful.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelsey. It's just been wonderful. It's a real treat, a privilege.
That's awesome. And again, if people are looking for your work, Jacqueline Kurio, they can find you on Instagram. People can find me through Instagram and Facebook. You can find me on kelseysweet.com. You can reach out to me out in the real worlds of social medias and stuff and ask me questions about whomever and guests and my kitty in the background chewing up my collage I was talking about earlier. We got Mitchell coming on next for our amazing introduction into more revolution in the morning. And I think what an opportunity to inspire people in a revolutionary way to connect to something like Labyrinths and their creative selves and to heal. So blessed be to all those people out there in the world, and thanks for supporting us here at Revolution Radio and Studio A. Thanks, Jacqueline. I'll see you all
Thank
next
you so
week.
much. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, I'm signing out. I think things are playing.